Welcome to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, I'm William Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Elumynt and the host of the Up Arrow podcast, where I feature the best finds in e-commerce to help you scale from 10 million to 100 million and far, far, far beyond that as well. Today, I have Josh Behr, a leading email and SMS marketing agency that helps e-commerce businesses grow their revenue and customer loyalty. With over 9 years of experience in digital marketing, he's worked with some of the largest apparel brands in the world, managing massive email lists, over 16 million users, launching viral campaigns and generating millions in sales, 38 million in 10 weeks. That's an interesting one we might talk about then as well today here. Josh, it is good to have you here.
Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. How about you? And you were introduced to me by David Herman. We kind of shared an early account. How did that end up happening? Do you remember?
So I spoke at Clavio's first conference back in 2018, happened to meet a prospective client there that ended up working with me for email. And at that time, I was running paid social ads, paid search ads. Thankfully, don't do that anymore. And one of the things the client asked me to do was look inside the ad account to see if I could find any ways of improving. So at this time, I don't know about the e-commerce community. I'm not on Twitter or anything else. So I'm going through the account and I felt like such a fool. And I was looking at this person's work and saying, wow, this is absolutely like amazing work. I called the client back and I said, I don't know this, whoever's running the account, you are in amazing hands. And actually took a lot of the learnings from things that were happening inside the account and applied it into the accounts that I was working on at that time.
Yeah. David is a brilliant marketer and a genuinely good guy, worth a follow on Twitter, if nothing else, for updates about what high-speed chases there in LA.
Yeah, that's the only problem that I know is that he's a Dodgers fan. As a lifelong Mets fan, he's got to, go to a new team.
Yep. Well, I'm excited to dig into this. Before we do, I want to announce our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Elumynt. Elumynt is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with one selling for nearly 800 million and one that IPO'd recently. You can learn more on our website at elumynt.com, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. That said, enough of that. Let's get into the good stuff. Tell me the backstory here. If I understand, you had the highest single day on Shopify at one time. Tell me about this backstory of where you come from that and doing what you're doing now today with A&B Interactive.
Sure. So I was actually an accountant for 10 years of my life. And at one point in my career, I went to the client's office and I said, hey, it's kind of time for you to move on to, a bigger accounting company. And he said, agreed, but what we really need is a controller. And at that time, I wasn't loving public accounting. He said, why don't you just come join? You're going to learn a lot. And we were in the fashion space, specifically in streetwear at the time. And one of the things that we learned about when he had a know-how, he learned that hoverboards were on the rise. And he said, why don't we just start a website and see what happens? So we ended up working, working with an agency at that time because nobody understood e-commerce. We were on Shopify and we ended up doing $38 million in a 10-week span. On Black Friday, I remember it was like yesterday, we did 1.1 million. We didn't know what to expect going into the weekend. And come Cyber Monday, we ended up doing $5.5 million in revenue, which at the time in 2015 was Shopify's highest day ever.
Amazing. That is like something that you can kind of like just hang up there as like this achievement, right? You're like, we broke the record.
It was an amazing experience. We were just pressing pedal to the metal. The funny part is it was all AdWords at the time, and it was on one campaign, one search, one, I forget the exact terminology, but it was literally built on one ad that just kept scaling through the roof.
Yeah. And that's why A/B testing is always worthwhile, because you can have a lot of winners, but you never know if you're just one ad away from that one that is completely going to change the course and trajectory of the business. So you transitioned from being an accountant to crushing Shopify's sales and eventually to launching AMB Interactive. Why? What made you say, you know what, email is something that I feel like we need to dig into and do better?
So what happened there was when right after hoverboards, it got shut down, government came in, and we just looked at the landscape and we knew e-commerce was an important thing. I went to the CEO 2 days after the new year and I said, hey, I think I found what I loved. I really enjoyed being in the weeds with the agency that we were working with at the time and learning so much and continuing to grow. So we then started just launching a bunch of other websites. So we launched an LED light up sneaker company. We had an electric skateboard and bike company. We did GoPros and drones and so many other products that we just figured if we put up a website, we would do well because we just figured it was that
Sure.
easy. We learned the lesson that it wasn't. But one of the things that happened was we purchased a brand called Jack Threads. I think we were the fourth owners of the brand. And one of the things that we were excited about was inheriting a 16 million person email list. And one of the things that we learned very quickly is every single problem you can have with trying to manage a 60 million person email list. So we had every deliverability problem under the sun. Everything that you could do wrong, we did it wrong. Cross sell, upsell, we were sending an email every single day. So we learned all the nuances. And, at that time, Andrew, the CEO of Clavio, would actually come down to our office in Manhattan, work through different strategies, really diving into the weeds with us. Such a great experience. Why I've been working with Clavio since 2015. They've been great partners and, really like kind of putting that emphasis and work forward. So that's where I really started to learn and enjoy email. We ended up weeding that 16 million person customer list down to around 350 to 400,000 customers for it to then only be a profitable endeavor that we were making money on and driving good deliverability, open clicks. But that's when we learned everything about Google Postmaster and everything else, which is really important now with all the new regulations coming out from Google, Yahoo, and others.
Yeah. And that is the core topic that we want to talk about today, which was how to actually do personalization in email. And I think that there's going to be some interesting things we can dig into. I do want to dig into some aspects of, why you weeded down that 60 million list and why that was one of the things that helped turn profitability. Well, let's go and talk about that part now, and then we'll get into the rest of what we're going to talk about. But why was that one of the triggers for improving the profitability from email by getting rid of millions of emails?
So what happened was, the user base was just built up over so many years, and then they had a sister company, Thrillist, that they were working with that was growing the user base tremendously. But what we were learning is that the people weren't actually engaging with emails. Then as you go through, I guess, a fourth sale, you have a lot of upset customers. The Jack Threads was shut down for a while, left a lot of people annoyed, couldn't return. They had a program where you could try before you buy. I think they were one of the first ones, if not the first company to actually have it. This is previous to us. And, I guess not overly successful. That caused them to go out of business. And when we picked it up, which we weren't thinking of, we picked up a very angry email base. So every time we sent an email, it led to thousands of tickets in customer service.
Sure.
And you try to win those people over as much as you can, but they're just so angry. They don't care if you're the new Jack Threads. They just know that you as Jack Threads, which caused a lot of issues. So, we started segmenting and really whittling down who's active, engaged. Actually, one of the things that we did back then, which you can't do now, is we used jackthreads.co to try and use as a separate IP to warm people up and, not really, maybe a little black hat tactics that I wouldn't do today, just with the rules changing so much, but something that we were trying to do to try and then migrate over people to jackthreads.com. So, just we had no choice but to whittle it down just based upon engagement and what we were seeing, because otherwise we were just carrying a very heavy email list, paying a fortune to imagine, having 60 million contacts and trying to pay for all of those just wasn't making sense. Every time you sent an email, you lost money.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. What I think I've talked about before, how not every email address is created equal, right? And one of the things that I see a lot of people had done for a while too, where it's like there's the spin to win, and there's a lot of the exit prompts, and all of those are great ways to attract new email addresses. But if you're not continually cleaning up those email addresses, then you end up with just, to your point, also like a mass of uh, people that you don't want to necessarily continue sending email after email after email to.
Well, the other thing that's happening today, everyone's very focused on improving their email and SMS capture rate, which is great. I don't knock the strategy of it. I think it's important. But, I think everyone looks at it as a net positive. Oh, I have a 15% opt-in rate. I have a 10%. I have a 20% opt-in rate, which is great. But there's a cost that you have to carry by obtaining those emails. So, the goal has to be to convert those people. Otherwise, you're just having people on the list that it's actually costing you more money. So, yes, it's a positive to get that person on the list, but you also have to look at the other end of it, that there's a cost. Yes, relatively cheap, but as you add that up over time, it can really start to hurt.
Mm-hmm. So let's dive into the personalization of email marketing, because I know that's the core of what we wanted to talk about today. What are some of the biggest things that people need to think about when they're looking at starting to do better personalization that actually gets results?
So, it's actually relatively easy to implement personalization into emails. Just starting at the basic level, as people are viewing products, how do you insert that into subject lines? How do you show that actually into campaign blocks of recently viewed products? Having, yes, abandonments are, the one-on-one fundamentals everyone knows, but how do you go beyond that and, changing subject lines? But really, like, the next level is starting to update people's personal profile properties inside their accounts. So as people place an order, you have so much now information, low-hanging fruit, that the second they place an order, you can insert a profile property saying, what size did they buy? What color did they buy? What size do they wear? And as you get that information, how do you now use that to your advantage when you're sending out campaigns? So, at the basic level, let's say I went and bought a sneaker, I wear a size 13. And if there was a new sneaker that comes out and says brand new in size 13, it feels more personal in that experience. And that way you're able to just say, oh, okay, great. This sneaker's in. They know who I am. It feels like it's more meant for you. And this is without even the need to change the actual creative and making. The other thing that we find that is really, really helpful, especially when people are trying to clear out of old inventory. So as we're talking about profitability, also cash flow. So how do you turn an inventory asset into a cash flow positive? Because sitting on a dead asset doesn't really make much sense. So one of the things that we encourage brands to do is, run a sale, but do it by size. There's no more frustrating of experience. I go through it all the time. You go to a website and now you start clicking like, oh, that shirt looks nice. Oh, it's not in my size. Those shoes look like, whatever it is, when it's not a one size fits all, leads to a really bad experience in regard to, that customer experience on the website. So one of the things that you can do is a shop by size email where you put all the sizes that you offer. When they click on that button, it's updating that profile property. So even if they haven't purchased, you're getting information on your potential customer that then you're also leading them to a very filtered selection of what's available in the size that they have available. It sounds like common sense, but you'd be surprised how many people don't actually implement these basic things and basic rules that they would take on their own website or in their own viewing habits. So this is where, like, having those profile property updates, and then again, in sale, in your size, in sale, in your favorite color, how do you learn more about their viewing habits? Another thing that we have seen success with is as people are viewing a certain, let's say a brand, let's say you have multiple brands or multiple shirts or multiple colors, you can actually create webhooks inside of Clavio where you're capturing that data in real time, understanding their viewing on the website, And then that can lead to when you're sending a campaign, maybe you're not widening the audience to everybody, but you can widen the audience to people that you know are viewing certain products on your site in real time, or certain colors, or how they're filtering. So there's so much that can happen that are just like missed opportunities, but lead to much higher click-through rates. And at the end of the day, much higher revenue per recipient when they actually go through that experience, which at the end of the day is the most important thing, tailoring that experience to your consumer.
So, you know, it reminds me of the song, right? From what's the name of the song? Cheers, whatever. It's like, we ought to go where everybody knows your name. And we do. We want that kind of attention where it's like, this is actually for me. And you sent me an email. You didn't send out your email list. You sent me an email. I know in the B2B side, there's a lot of platforms that do contact enrichment to fill out a lot of these other fields about people. Is that a thing in the B2C side? Is there a way to enrich your contact list with pertinent information outside of just what they've done on your website?
Sure. So, one of the tools that we like to use is Spellbound, where you can put quizzes inside the email. So they actually never leave the email experience, where you can get them to go through like a quiz. Why'd you stop buying? Or, why did your subscription end? Did you have too much, too little? Did you like the product? I saw someone put on Twitter, they have in their post-purchase experience, give us a review. Did you like the product 1 through 4? And based upon what they choose, right? If it's a 1, you can send them into customer service, get that loyalty back to the customer. And if they give you the highest rating, which was, I think, a 4 is what they put, you can start upselling them a different experience. So, there's so much enrichment that you can do and not be overly complicated, not spend a ton of money on tech that, a lot of these platforms have as a second nature. Clavio has it, ListTrack has it, SendLane has it. There's so much out there that people can use to their advantage that is just sitting there. They just have to actually put a little bit of time into it, but not overcomplicate things, and still see a much more positive experience than they're having today.
Yeah. So if we don't want to overcomplicate it, right? Because you could have 1,000 data points about each customer, and that's you're getting to the point where that's just not helpful. What are some of the other, you mentioned size being one. Like, what are some of the other really good contact properties that you should be filling out, whether it's apparel or not? Like, maybe there's some apparel specific ones, but other areas too.
So I think one of the easiest ones is doing a profile property update based upon what they're viewing on the website, whether it's at the collection level or at the product level, and then just building out segments based upon what they're viewing, and really like diving into the email based upon their viewing habits. So yes, they'll go into browse abandonments, but as you're also sending campaign-based emails, how do you tailor that email experience more to them? And even if it's a subsection in the email, just as like a gentle reminder as a follow-up, because you knew that they viewed it. And again, you can do a hide show block, so it would only show to a specific group of people inside the campaign. It goes a long way in getting people to click and convert over.
Yeah. So we had a brand called MA Performance, and they sell like aftermarket car parts and things to kind of soup up your ride a little bit, right? And we did similar things like this on the ad side as well, where if you have a Subaru, it doesn't make sense for me to show you parts for Ford that don't fit your car. And so it's like that idea of how do we make sure that we're showing you the parts that fit not just all Subarus, but your specific Subaru. Like, this actually fits the one that we know that you have. And so there were things we would do on the ad side. And I imagine it's the same thing from the email perspective, where you're like, look, I already know that this is the car you have, not just this brand, but you have this specific car. And so these are the parts that actually fit the car you have. Why don't we go a little bit more into sending you emails that are relevant to what you actually can do something about?
Yeah, and great call out. And also one of the other things now with Clavio, I know 6 months ago or a year ago, they launched an integration into AdWords directly, where you can push the segments that are being built. And that's why it's important for, we always find it important for us as an agency to speak to, paid social teams or paid search teams to understand, hey, what's working on your end? And it's a good back and forth conversation that generally lifts all tides. And, everyone's worried about attribution, but it takes so many touch points. Worry about increasing sales for the client. Don't worry about the attribution. It'll all come to fruition one way or another.
Yep. And pushing those segments into Google as well as Meta is absolutely huge. We do that as well. All of the different segments that we're creating. And one of the benefits that I like about that on Clavio, as well as other programs as well, but we use Clavio the most, is that it's updated automatically, like in live time, basically, right? Where it's not like, hey, once a month you've updated this list or something like that. It's continually updating, which I think helps that list stay very fresh on the ad side. Why you told me before that also when you're doing personalized emails, design is important. And design sometimes says to me that it's like, oh, the design is the aesthetic, but it's like, what do you mean by the design of the email is important?
So one of the things why we think design is so important is so many people try to overcomplicate their emails. They feel like they need to put 20 different things into an email, turns into this very long format email. And sometimes it's just as basic as, what is the main call to action? One of the great things that I learned from working when I was working in house, I had to go to TJ Maxx and try to sell fidget spinners in. And I did successfully, but I got ripped apart on packaging and so many other things. And one of the things that this woman taught me was you have 2 seconds for someone to make a decision. And after that, they are walking by and moving on. It's the same thing with email. Someone's going to make a decision above the fold in 2 seconds. So just a very, clear call to action. The hierarchy of the font is really important. Where do you want to draw the consumer's eyes? What's the first thing they're going to see when they open that email is so important. That's your hook. You have to have a very strong hook in what is someone going to read. And one of the biggest things that we're noticing now is almost like true direct response copywriting. What is that problem solution? So think about like the ShamWow and those guys that are screaming on TV. But guess what? It still works. So that's where we find that having that like really simple design, call to action, making like a clear formula for the consumer to follow goes a long way. It'll help improve click-through rates. They know exactly what you're asking them to do, and then they go do it and hopefully go make the purchase once you land them on the website. Don't sell the whole story in the email. You got to want the consumer wanting more and drive. The goal of the email is to drive the click. The goal of the website is to convert. And many people forget that. They want to give the whole story in the email. Well, guess what? Now you just told the whole story. They're making a decision. Generally, what we see is the more often we can land people on the site, the more likely they are to convert. If you do it in the email, they're gone.
Yeah, it's the same in advertising too. Sometimes we try to convert too much in the ad, but it's like the goal of the ad is to get you to the website. I need to create enough intrigue for you to say, "Yep, this is for me. I want it. I want to learn more. I'm interested." What's interesting though about what you're saying from the design perspective is it reminds me of I don't remember who did this. The name of the guy here. I think we talked about it on Kurt Elster's episode here as well. But there was he created 2 websites. One was the user is drunk. And one was the user is my mom. And for the user is drunk, he literally would just get drunk and then like review people's websites. And for the users, his mom is his actual mom, I'm pretty sure, that would review the website. And you can just picture just like, I don't know what I'm looking at. What's going on? Why is this over here? How do I click on this? But the idea there is it's like, this should be very simple. And the same is true for your email where I don't know why, but for some reason, we like to think this idea that it's like, well, if I have 15 things in there, then I increase my odds that one of those 15 things is the thing that they want. And so then I'm going to be able to get this. When if in reality, if you actually did a better job of segmenting people, like you were saying, and this is personalized, and it's the one thing, and you know that this is the thing that they're interested in, it's their size, it's their color, it's their car, it's whatever, you're increasing that. I know we would do this in SaaS too, where we would limit the number of choices you had for offerings to like 3, because we found that if you have more than that, your likelihood of making a decision is like, I can't decide. I need to do research. I'll come back later, and you've lost sale.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. That's where you may not have the biggest segment of people when you're trying to personalize the experience for the user, but the revenue that you will generate from such a small segment of people at times, it may seem like more work, but generally those campaigns will actually lead to more revenue than just the more basic generic campaign. And that's what brands tend to forget. They're more worried about sending an email. How many people can we hit on the list? Are we using 80% of the list, 90% of the list? Why aren't we using all of it? And what you have to explain to everyone is not every email is meant for every single consumer. Just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean the consumer wants to hear about it. And they tell you that by the opens and the clicks. Well, maybe not so much the opens anymore today with Apple MPP, but that click rate is really like the true driver of the consumer saying, yes, you were effective or you were not.
Well, and let's say that even if it didn't make quite as much revenue in the short term, it creates better lifetime revenue. And the reason why, and I think to make sure that everybody's thinking about this in the right perspective, is that you can burn your list out pretty quickly if all you're sending are generic things. But if you're sending something to somebody that's definitely more personalized that they enjoy, they're going to want to continue to open your emails in the future because you're not just burning them out with generic stuff that they're not interested in. And so maybe that big giant one that you send out to 60 million people, maybe that does generate more initial revenue from a single email than segmenting everything out and filtering it down to 430,000 people that are active. Maybe more revenue on that day, but more revenue over the lifetime of the customer significantly is going to weigh towards the ones where the customer feels a better connection to the brand.
So, William, let me tell you something that everyone should be doing. So what they should be doing is going into their email platform and exporting all the campaigns that they run, maybe in the last 365 days, maybe 2 years, depending on how much information you want to go through. And the two metrics that we always add on is how many products are being viewed in that viewed product rate, and how many people are actually getting to the checkout process based upon the campaigns that we're sending. Because the mistake that people are making is they'll look at that open rate, they're looking at click rate, but they're also not taking into the account the amount of recipients that they're sending to. So if they send to too many people, you're probably going to hurt your click rate. So people are going to look at, oh, this email had a low click rate and, revenue was okay and in comparison, but we don't want to run that again because the click rate was low. But did that cause a lot of people to start viewing products and multiple products? Did that get people to start the checkout process? Did you get people lower into the funnel that are going to now allow your flow emails? Or is that people now leading people to running a Google search and then you have a good remarketing campaign there that's, driving people back? So there's so many touch points that people are missing on that go just beyond open, click, and revenue. Yes, extremely important metrics to look at, but you have to look beyond that as well. And when you start doing the sorts, at the top, you'll see a lot of, Black Friday campaigns and Cyber Monday campaigns. But then that's when you start going through and you start finding all the gold mines of information. You're like, wow, I ran this campaign 6 months ago, but I've never ran anything like it. And this caused a lot of people to take action on the website. I should start doing that and test into that a little more to see if it causes a similar situation. Does that lead to increases in revenue? Go back and look at that day on Shopify and see, did you have high sales that day? Comparing it to maybe 2 days before and 2 days after, did that lead to a lift? There's so many things that people can do that go beyond just open and click.
I love it. That reminds me of something that you shared on Twitter recently as well. Another thing that people should be removing from their email list was Apple Mail Privacy Protection false opens. What are false opens and why is this a thing?
So how iOS 14.5 came for paid, iOS 15 came for email. So what started happening is you started sending a campaign and it was automatically Apple, ruined everyone's life. Everyone loves Apple. I hate Apple. Even though
I still love Apple.
I own
made
everything.
My job a lot harder, but I love Apple. I got the Vision Pro. It's on its way. I can't wait.
Oh, you have to tell me how it is. That's
but
gonna
anyways,
be awesome. Yeah, I'm Team Apple all the way. I use Mac. I use everything.
Okay.
And but I hate them because they made our lives harder.
They do.
So So what started happening is, you started sending an email, getting a quote unquote open, but no one was actually opening the email. If you started looking at profiles, you'd send an email at 12 and the open happened at 12. Well, what are the chances of someone's opening an email within seconds? At times, yes, it's going to happen, but more often than not, it's not going to happen. So one of the things that we recommend our clients doing is we start building out that Apple Mail privacy protection segment. And what we do is, in the beginning, is we actually start including it as a segment because they were able to see the actual data on how that group is performing, and we can use the data to our advantage to explain to the client that, hey, this actually isn't doing that well. Yes, you'll see 80% open rates, but you also see a 0.1% click-through rate. Right. And it's actually hurting your deliverability at the end of the day. This is not to say not to never email them. When there's a sale happening, new arrivals, those are great opportunities to expand your list and send a relevant email. But, on a Tuesday afternoon, you're sending a campaign because everyone wants to just send an email because they think it makes money for the brand. Is that really the opportunity to send to people that aren't really truly opening your email? No, that's right. Not the time to send to those people.
Yeah. So I think that makes sense. That's a good one. And speaking then of clicks, and you were talking about this and you were kind of alluding to this even just a little bit ago. And I want to run with this thought a little bit more, but it's looking beyond the opens and clicks. And this is something you were talking about on Twitter as well, but you talked about like maybe the things that they're viewing, but like what are the other things that we should be looking at beyond just opens and clicks?
So truly there also, I'm going to going into Google Analytics, and I know this pains people, especially with GA4.
Sure.
But are people spending more time on site from the campaigns that you're sending? Like, what's causing people to be very curious? And I know a lot of people don't want to go into that much detail about the, email campaign sends, but there's such low-hanging fruit that, you do a data analysis maybe once every 90 days, every 6 months to understand what's causing people to stay on the website longer. Once you get them that hooked in, their likelihood to conversion is there. So there's so many things, there's that aspect of it. And also looking at bounce rates. Did you get the click and then they immediately left the website at the same time? Did you land the person on the right spot? So there's actual data that goes beyond just email opens. Viewed products are great. As I mentioned, add to carts, checkout abandonments, but time on site's another one. Are you putting them in the right spot that's leading to a conversion?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because the whole point is if you're leading them to a point where they're bouncing fast, to your point, you've maybe lost them even more. You've done more damage. Where the next time you send out an email, then they're going to think twice before clicking. They're going, last time, wherever you took me, that was dumb. I have no interest in clicking on this again, where maybe they would have if you had landed them somewhere that was more appropriate in the first place.
Yeah. Listen, I can, I feel like gamify the system and run really strong, problem solution based emails. But if you don't put them in a place where it's going to fully help answer that question, whether it's in skincare or hair care, there's so many different use cases for this. And you'd be surprised how many people just land and go, I don't get it. And they're out, which is a terrible experience. And then to your point, now you lost them.
Yeah. Something else that you talked about that I really appreciated was what we almost call, like, let's say email BS. And let's say one of the ones that you talked about was anonymous user tracking. Is this BS?
Yes, it absolutely drives me crazy. All of these tools that do the anonymous user tracking can work. To me, it's when you're starting to take the email addresses of people that didn't actually engage with your email and putting them into the system is going to start doing a lot of things. So number one, starting February 1st, Google and Yahoo rolled out that if you spam complaint rates go above a 0.3%, you're going to start affecting your deliverability. No, if you do it once, it's not going to hurt you. But when people start receiving emails from you that didn't explicitly give you your email address, that's actually going to hurt you negatively and actually affect your actual users. The other thing that we started split testing is we started getting emails from anonymous user trackers that we didn't actually sign up their email for. And because clients love these tools, they think it's the world's greatest thing. And what we started doing is running them through split tests. So what we would do is take 50% of the users and give them a profile property tag of to receive emails, or the other one where they wouldn't receive, we'd put the B section like didn't receive an email. And then we would wait 2 weeks and see how many people actually converted. Did they actually need those emails? Or were we just sending an email and then, a lot of these anonymous user tracking tools have an exorbitant cost to them and it costs you a fortune. Now, where we do see tools, like a Black Crow, a Blotout, Elevar, and there's others out there that I'm not thinking of being successful, is when they're using your first party data. So in a with all these cookie tracking problems, 1 day from paid social and 7 days otherwise, understanding who your user is that you actually know, people that have purchased, and then they're coming back on site and you can now trigger emails based upon their viewing habits on the website. That we have seen be very successful. And those types of tools that, are working in compliance to make things better, those tools we highly recommend for our clients.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And once they've logged in, then you do have better data about who that person is over the longer period of time. Another one that you said is you don't like it when people say retention is the new acquisition.
Absolutely not. Email and SMS, and I am a full email and SMS agency. There's no paid anything. There is no way we are successful without good, strong traffic constantly coming to the website. The whole goal of an email agency should be to get the person from purchase 1 to purchase 2. Yes, our goal is obviously to help close that first purchase, but so many agencies, depending on the attribution tool that you're using, right? They send the first email of a welcome flow or the first email of an SMS, and you strip that information away from your marketing, your email agency. Then tell me how good they actually are. How good are they then? And that's the nonsense that drives me crazy. I'm sorry, don't come to us if you don't have a strong channel. You should use all that money in your paid search or your paid social. That's where you should be putting your money, because you can have the world's greatest email program, but if no one's there to receive the emails, what'd you do?
Yeah. So one of the things we were talking a little bit about, spin to win and some of the other ways that you can capture emails. The best email address that you can have in there is somebody who actually purchased, right? Like they've already qualified themselves for future purchases by purchasing in the first place. And so I like that. One segment that we like to look at with that then too are people that purchase during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or during discounts, maybe being discounted a little bit in terms of like what we expect from future performance as well, at least from an advertising perspective, because their entry into the brand was different. I don't expect them to behave the same way that I expect other people who paid full price for a particular item to behave when I send out an ad or an email or something like that to them.
So a great thing to do there, speaking of personalization, now you're going to start getting into the weeds a little bit and you got to put some time in. So imagine someone buys for Mother's Day. Like the low-hanging fruit, and this is not even personalization. This is not this level of personalization yet, but the low-hanging fruit is set a flow up, and 48 weeks later, so 4 weeks before, you start reminding them to go. Most likely they bought a gift for somebody during that time, right? Low-hanging 101 things. But if you really want to get more detailed, start exporting your Shopify information or whatever platform that you're using and figure out who your bill to and ship tos are different. Guess what? Those are all gift givers for the most part, especially if they're in different states. It's not going to be 100% perfect, but now you're talking about tailoring messaging. Like, here's a gift guide, right? There's so many different unique use cases that you can do if you're but that's going, that takes some decent amount of work to do. But some brands that have the time to do that, it really makes sense and provides value that that they're a gift giver, even though they didn't explicitly tell you.
Yeah, that's brilliant, especially if you happen to have a brand that is more gift giving esque, if that makes sense, right? Where it's like there are some things that it's like, well, yeah, some people are giving gifts for that, but like there are certain brands that these are often going to be given more as gifts.
Correct. All right. Imagine
Um,
like Venus LaFleur and all these flower brands, so
for
much
sure.
information sitting there for them.
One of the other email BS statements that you were talking about here was, and I saw this on your Twitter as well. Recency and frequency, but isn't open really an open is what I put. I don't know. That was the note that I had. But does that say anything to me? Like recency and frequency, but isn't open really an open?
Yeah. So really how, everyone worries about how much they're emailing. Is it too much? Is it too little? I think you got to look at like the life cycle and understand your product and how quick they're willing to buy your product. You're selling a $1,300 product, it's going to take them much more. The consideration time is just much longer. So there, I would build out your welcome flow maybe
Sure.
for 30 days, 60 days, something beyond the standard 5 day, and be willing to engage. You got to provide value, but be willing to engage with that consumer. What value does your product provide at that price level? Where if you're selling a $30 product, to me, you have a day. So, you may want to send your welcome flow, maybe 3 emails within 24 hours, because at that point, if your product's $30, you may have lost them.
Yeah.
So, everyone's very concerned about recency and frequency but sometimes you got to just be very aggressive with how often you're willing to email, which, a lot of people think is contradictory because you're going to annoy the consumer. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get that conversion. For the most part, I don't think you do. And especially if you have a very low AOV product, your first time acquisition costs, you're trying to cut that down to as low as humanly possible. How do you make that first order profitable? You gotta put pedal to the metal on it.
Yeah. It reminds me of something Michael Siegel from Deco created. He was on this podcast a few weeks back. One of the things that they do, so they sell home decorations that they send it out as like a box, right? So it's like, one of those boxes that you receive, and it's a subscription box. But he has a lot of content that goes into the after sell where, okay, great. You receive these decorations. What do you do with them? Right. And so then there's videos and stuff like that and blog posts they put together to help you use the decorations they just sent you. And then they'll continue on that nurture with you. So it's like, let's call it your welcome or your nurture, whatever after that. But where it's like, okay, maybe it was a Valentine's box. Well, what do you do with these decorations now? It's no longer Valentine's Day. Do you just throw them all away or whatever? It's like, how can you actually use these decorations in a different way for whatever's coming up now? So, okay, let's say that it's, I'm drawing a blank on right now. What's the big holiday in March where we dress up with green? Why am I drawing
St.
a blank
Patrick's
on that?
Day?
Thank you. So let's say that it's St. Patrick's Day and you're like, okay, great. I've got these decorations that I just got. How do I reuse these decorations for St. Patrick's Day? And so they put together content on how to reuse the stuff that they've sent you in times past. I think that's a beautiful way to continue, let's just say your welcome series or nurture series, to make more value out of what you've already sent them.
You brought up a great point. One of the most overlooked things is a great post-purchase experience, especially if you're a single-use product. And when you're like a single-use product, it's really important to make sure people are using your product as much as humanly possible. So, are you giving recipes? If it's a cleaning product, I guess I would, if it's, decorations, to your point, how do you get people to like use that product? Because one of the things that will happen from there is true word of mouth. Now, that attribution will never come back to email and be direct or however it comes. But, getting people to use your product immediately, how to use it, how to ask questions, it's amazing. Like they feel a part of the community. The other thing that, a lot of people are seeing success with is a Facebook community where, people get to share their content or if they're making something or how to use it or different recipes for cooking, just depending on what you're selling. All these things go along. If you have a journal, how do you journal? How do you use it? How do you make sure that someone's actually using your product so
Yeah.
that when it comes time to get the next one, they've been using it and they're very excited to continue on.
Yep. I love that. So what are some examples of, or at least an example of somebody that you know, whether this is a brand that you've worked with or whatever, and maybe you can name them and maybe you can't, and that's fine. If the example is more important than the brand name, that's fine too. But of email personalization done just exceptionally well, that you say this is the gold standard, or something that happened that you're like, this was great, I love it.
So I can't share the something that we've worked on. I'm not allowed to share, but we're at a point where if you go to a website and you view, and it's in fashion, if you view a product, and I'd say they're similar to like maybe a Macy's or Nordstrom's where they have, thousands of different products. We're at a point where if you view product X, we're going to show you brands that are very similar to them that you should look at and that you'll know. But we're also starting to introduce brand new brands that are up and coming in that category that are similar to what you already viewed that you may not have heard of, but they're starting to trend and pop and get you ahead of the game. Where, certain brands do fall off. It's just like anything else in fashion. So how do you build that personalized experience? And, working with a good dev team definitely helps, push events back into Clavio that allow that personalization to happen. And then as your viewing habits change on the website, your personalization changes. So if you go from, let's call it streetwear to high fashion, your experience in what you're viewing in your email is going to change because of those things. And then if you're in the Northeast and it's cold, guess what? You should see cold weather stuff, where if you're in the South in a heat wave, guess what? You're probably not looking at a jacket. And we need to show you more things timely that way. So that level of personalization really helps. And you see the difference in revenue per recipient by over 1,000x. It's absolutely insane. Now, it's hard to get those people through that personalized experience. Again, people come to the website. Not everyone gets to the level that we need. But again, how do you do more quizzes, learn more about them, goes a long way.
I think that's a beautiful example and a beautiful metric that you called out to revenue per recipient. Is that something that you think everybody should be tracking when they're talking about email?
So we think in flows and campaigns, especially in flows, it's really important to look at because there's certain things that we can't control. Again, we can't control how many people are actually going to trigger that metric on the website. Again, very important to work with a very good paid team. Again, we're not acquisition, we are retention, trying to retain people and get them to purchase. And, how do you improve that revenue per recipient? It may sound like a little. How do you go, and I'm going to use a random number. If you go from 10 cents to 12 cents in a revenue per recipient, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start increasing the amount of volume that's actually going through that flow, it's like an annuity that continues to pay dividends over the course of the year. And everyone, you got to look at the key metrics. So the things that we're looking to improve on in flows is, how do you improve click rate and how do you improve that revenue per recipient? People ask us like, well, how do you improve the revenue? Well, send more people and, 1 + 1 will eventually equal 2. But our goal is to always look for small incremental ways, at times big, but the more that we can improve that, the better the brand will be, the more money they can spend top of funnel and grow their top line revenue.
I love it. What about the flip side? Instead of a success, are there any examples of email personalization gone horribly wrong that you're like, please don't do this? This is an embarrassment. I don't ever want to catch you doing this.
I'd say just the biggest thing is that we see people go wrong with is actually not testing their emails. You'd be surprised how many people do not test it and the personalization doesn't actually work. And that's probably like the biggest thing. I would say, the biggest thing that I think most people go wrong with in personalization is they get too far into the weeds of it and they get actually nothing accomplished, where they're looking at too many different things and they're not looking at the greater good. So they go through all of these different, getting development people involved, and it turns into 100 people, which could be good or bad depending on your AOV or anything else. But when you have a list size of 400,000,
Yeah.
did all that work make sense, or were there other things like, again, improving your abandonment flows or your post-purchase flow that can increase your revenue per recipient in a much bigger way than just, everyone loves to do buzz things. It's actually making sure that it's like the good old 80-20 rule. And, it's always 80% of the sales is in 20% of the products. Most of the time we're seeing it's in 10%.
Sure. Yep. You talked about some of this on the personalization stuff here too. So I want to ask you, have you ever heard of an email company called Clay.com? They're more B2B, so it's not like in the same space, but have you heard of them and what they're doing?
I have not.
So this is interesting. And I'm wondering if there is a B2C equivalent that maybe Clavio or somebody is doing. But they're allowing you to use ChatGPT to write the introductory sentence for each one. And so on the B2B side, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like you're sending out an email to somebody and you're like, great, I want them to say something personal about blah, 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 right? Maybe we don't want to get to that level, but it's like, is there anything that you know of in the B2C world that is allowing that to happen automatically? And if so, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because I can see that going very horribly wrong too, because you're not getting to proof check that to every single person you're sending it out to.
So we're actually in the midst of testing this right now in real time on a client where we are taking, over 100,000 profiles. And when we send the campaign out, it could be done to 100,000 unique individuals. Right now it's in plain text beta. It's not designed yet at the moment. But again, we're actually seeing a really good lift in, again, revenue per recipient of 40% when we're running this type of analysis, understanding that if you're, again, there's a lot of it's based upon viewing habits, but, being able to run that in real time is absolutely insane. And yes, some of it is done through ChatGPT, and it is happening in a really real way. I'm not allowed to mention who it is yet. I was sworn to secrecy, but it's coming really soon. I'm really excited about it. These two guys are crazy. They're doing crazy things. It's going to be really good for brands. If obviously you got to pay attention to what you're doing, and it's not the end all be all. It's not going to replace design campaigns, and eventually there'll be a design element to it. But imagine understanding, here's a perfect use case of how we're using it. And it's on a skincare brand. So if we know you purchase product A, so let's say it's a face wash, but you bought that, but you also looked at shampoo, conditioner, and something else. How do we drive that experience to remind you of the things that you looked at, and that in your next campaign, in your post-purchase experience? And because everyone has unique viewing habits on what they're taking, and trying to run that for anybody, in-house agency in real time, it's impossible. You're never going to get it right. But if you can use tools to your advantage that can understand your data in seconds and spit it back out, it's not seconds. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to run, but that's nothing. You're talking about days worth of work here.
Right.
And we're seeing 40% lifts on those types of campaigns in a revenue per recipient model versus others, and using the same group in designs and in this personalized experience.
That's brilliant. You're talking about like shampoo, conditioner, body wash. It reminded me of what AI would probably tell me is the 9-in-1, right? Where it's like you can also wash your car and your dog with it too. It's like just throw it all in together.
100% needed.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to get into the personal side of who is Josh Behr as well. One of the things that I always like to talk about is like childhood and what led to that. But you said there's actually maybe something better as far as like, why are you a successful entrepreneur? And you talked about perhaps it's because of the misery of the Jets. Why has that helped you become a better entrepreneur?
So I think one of the most important things as a lifelong Jet fan, my father and my uncle started as season ticket holders back in 1990. I started going to games. I'm now a season ticket holder. My uncle moved to Florida. And now this past year, I roped my poor 5-year-old son into the New York Jets misery. And he's already asking me, how come they always lose? Hard to explain. And should tell him to get used to it really quickly. But one of the things that it teaches you is that not everything that you think is going to be great, like using the Jets, we thought we had Aaron Rodgers, we thought we had the solution until 4 plays into the season when I was standing there in the stadium, and I never heard the stadium so silent in my life when this man went down. Everyone was just looking at each other, wondering what just happened. And then when the news came out during the game, everyone was just absolutely devastated with what happened. So one of the things in entrepreneurship and running a business is not everything that we do is going to be perfect. We're going to have losses with clients. Not every great idea that we have is going to work, even if we have the best intentions in mind. So similar to the Jets, similar to any sports franchise, right? There's a lot of free agency. You think you're hiring the right employee or hiring the right wide receiver or whatever it is. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. Look at the Mets. They spent over $300 million on their payroll. And again, another subpar season. I'm also a lifelong Met fan, so I just love the losing. And, can't help it. Steve Cohen had all the right intentions, but, and that's happened with staff. We had the right intentions, asked all the right interview questions, and sometimes a staff member doesn't work out. I have a line that we now at A&B live by is, in the words of Coach Rob Saleh of the New York Jets, all gas, no brakes. We try to go as fast as possible because at the end of the day, we think speed wins. And where that place that I was working with the hoverboards, the other one was a day is a week is a month, and a month is a year. So you got to move quickly, move fast. The climate is changing. The economy is constantly changing by the second. So, you have to be able to move with it.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Just in the idea that if there's one thing that's guaranteed in your business, it's that you will make a mistake. Not just a mistake, you will make many mistakes, right? That's true in life. That's true in marriage. That's true in parenting. That's true in everything. The thing that's absolutely guaranteed is you're going to make mistakes. And so there's an element of the success comes from, in all of those situations, the resiliency to continue to get back up and keep going forward with that, and knowing that the mistake were inevitable. As long as you continue to, get back up and keep playing the game, that's when you succeed. Quit, if you give up, then you can't. If you quit the business, if you quit your marriage, if you quit being a good father or whatever, it's like that's when you actually lose. But if you get back up and you keep moving forward, you can move forward past mistakes.
Yeah, listen, my son 5 is a wrestler, so he just started wrestling, and he has won matches, lost matches, and he just keeps getting himself back up. And even at that young of an age, it's something I don't push for. He just wants to do it himself. He practices and wants to get better, and that's how you have to do it.
Yeah. There's a quote that we have on our website from Coach Woody Hayes, OSU football coach, and I think still the winningest football coach in OSU history, that I really appreciate. And I'm from Ohio, so that's where that comes in, which I like to win. So how about that? But the thing that he says that I really appreciate was, if I remember correctly, the story goes where he ended up poaching an opposing team member in the chest, and I don't remember who it was. And they're, in the conference afterwards, they're like, "Do you think you went too far with this?" And clearly he did. But the quote that he said was something along the lines of, "I would rather get to the end of my career having gone too far than to get there and say I could have done more." And I think if we have that mentality, that mindset in business, whatever that is, where it's like, you're going to make mistakes. So don't worry about the mistakes you're going to make. Just go, like, do it. That's better than leaving something on the table and wondering, what if I would have tried?
Yeah. Well, by the way, side note on Ohio, we went this past summer to Ohio because we went to the Hall of Fame, because when is the Jet ever going to get back in? And I have to say, Marianne Donuts was the best donut I have ever had in my, we still talk about it to this day, how good it was.
So, okay, you don't understand what kind of rabbit hole you just opened up. I'm from Canton, Ohio, of all places. So the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You're talking Marianne Donuts. I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And in my opinion, you got to get the maple cream stick there. They don't have cream sticks very much around where I'm at. And I'm like, no. They call them a Long John. And then it's like, I remember biting into a Long John and there was no filling in there. I was like, this isn't, what is this kind of, sick joke that they're playing here? But it's the maple cream stick, Marianne Donuts. Did you try Peggy's Candy though while you were there?
I did not hear about Peggy's Candy. What happened? We went to the parade in the morning, and everybody's showing up with Marianne Donuts. And I was with my father, a friend of mine, and my son. And we're like, why is everyone have Mary? So we started asking. And by the way, the nicest people, nicest town ever. Every time a flag came by, everyone's standing up to salute it. It was probably one of the most unbelievable things from someone that grew up going to the Thanksgiving Day parade every single year. Talk about a difference in what I've seen. And it was just unbelievable. So we started talking to everyone. And it's like, you got to go. You have to get Marianne Donuts. Don't leave without getting it. So the next morning we were leaving and we got in the car. We drove to Marianne Donuts and we left. By the way, there was a fantastic ice cream shop that we found. I wish I remembered the name of it.
Maybe Taggart's?
Maybe. They had this banana split ice cream that was out of this world and a bunch of other things. So yeah, we really enjoyed our time there.
That's good. Well, okay. So on the flip side of this, then you talked about so we've got all of our sweets and treats. How do you deal with the stress of this job? You talked about your treadmill.
So the biggest thing that is the most helpful thing is having a treadmill. So I bought a standing desk and I started walking, every single day in between calls and talking to the team. And it just helps alleviate the stress of what you're going through, and it's easy to get through, 15,000, 20,000 steps in a day when sometimes you're just stuck and you just, you forget to go outside and, you forget, to go for a walk and do all these other wonderful things. At least this is something to keep you active and going, while normally this is a sit at your desk type of job all day long, and honestly my whole career with accounting.
Yeah. Josh, it's been absolutely amazing having you on here. If there was one last piece of advice or topic that you would give to people in our space, D2C space, doesn't have to be on topic, it could be completely off topic about life too, but what's the last piece of advice you would want to share?
I think the best piece of advice I can give to any single brand that we're working with is ensure that you are actually qualifying the people that you are working with. So one of the biggest pet peeves of mine when I worked in-house and I worked with agencies is day one, you'd meet someone like us. They sound really smart, really intelligent. And day 45, you're speaking to someone that 10 times more than. And there's nothing more frustrating of an experience than that. So ensure that you get to talk to the people that you're going to work with, ask them questions that, yes, maybe the sales team or the CEO is able to answer in a breeze because they've been doing it for a long time. But that doesn't mean that the company that the person that you're going to work with actually understands any of it, or they, what's their knowledge base. So, one of the things that, we try to work on is ensuring, I don't expect anyone on the team to go through the knowledge that I went through. It was a life that, it's hard to replicate, but how do we work with all of our clients? I actually am in the weeds. I touch every single client that we have. It really helps. And the second and last part is go get yourself a good paid, either in-house or paid agency. It's probably, to me, the most important thing in my lifetime that when I worked in-house, we spent money on when I didn't want to continue to run it and I had to focus on other things. It's so important. It's so valuable. And someone that is giving you as much knowledge as possible. There's no secrets in marketing.
Yeah.
We try to share everything with our clients because we feel the more they know, the faster we can run. So we think that, having that transparency with clients and with the agencies is, especially on the paid end, is really important.
Right there with you. No secret sauce. Like, share it all. Like, let's just get better, more intelligent as a team. Josh, this has been absolutely fantastic. If people want to work with you or they want to connect with you, follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can visit our website at ambinteractive.com, on Twitter, JBEHR919, and on LinkedIn, I have no idea. You can just search my name, Josh Behr. I'm sure I'll pop up. I'll be the guy with the bald head. And I give out as much information as I can on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's no nonsense. There's no fluff in it. It's really straight to the point. And hopefully you can find something that's going to make you better at what you're doing.
Yep, totally agree. Worthwhile follow there. And I watch a lot of the videos that you have there. So it's good stuff. Josh, thank you again for coming out, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom, your time with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you everyone for joining in today. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.